Today we are going to talk about big tech companies and how the industry is changing, because something that hasn't happened in many years is happening now, and that is competition. I mean, we have competition, but not really. If we look at the GPU side, we only had Nvidia and AMD, but now we have Intel. When it comes to CPUs, we only had two real choices, AMD and Intel, but now we have one more competitor, Qualcomm. Yes, the industry is finally shifting. We have Apple that is making chips as well, but those are only for Apple products, so I am not taking them into account. And you might think that the competition is not big news. I am kidding, everyone knows that this is big news, but let's talk about why this is so big and so good for us. But first, you will need to understand why this hasn't happened until now, and that has to do with cost to entry difficulty, and consumer loyalty. There are other factors as well, but I think these three are the main things that stop people from entering this industry, and we will touch on every single one of those as we go on. Because no company is immune to those things, not a single one, and what better place to start than the phone industry. Here we can actually see how hard it is for other companies to start making new things, and when someone actually innovates, how good it is for us, the consumer. Because on one hand we have LG, which didn't actually make any chipsets, at least no chipsets that are worth mentioning, but it did try some new things which didn't work out, and people lost their trust. And if people don't buy a certain number of units from you, then you will not make any money making the phones. So it failed because it didn't have any consumer loyalty. Then we have Samsung, who to their credit tried to go against Qualcomm for the high-end chipsets. It failed, and this time it did fail from entry difficulties, because it is Samsung, so it had money and it had loyal fans, but it lacked the experience needed for the chips, so it failed. And the Exynos chips were a disaster in the past when it came to flagship Samsung phones. They should have never tried that, but the success story goes to Samsung as well. And what did Samsung do for me to consider it successful? Samsung made Exynos chips, of course. And what makes these chips so great, you might ask? Well, since it is Samsung who is making these chips, if he combines them and puts them in the phones that they manufacture, they can make the phones cheaper because they don't need a middleman, the middleman being Qualcomm. Anyway, you might wonder, what does this mean? I just said they were a disaster. Well, they were at the flagship level because they weren't good enough for the flagships, but as I like to say, they are no bad chips, they are just bad prices for chips. And it couldn't have been said better here, because the mid-tier phones, they are cheap and they have a lot of performance, and people love them with the Exynos chips. And one other good thing that Exynos brings, that it is keeping Qualcomm innovating as well, because it knows that if it doesn't get better and better, Samsung will pause them sooner or later, so it needs to keep innovating as well. And it can't just make ridiculous prices, because people can turn to Samsung and buy chips from them, and this is bad for Qualcomm, and it is not good for Samsung either, because Qualcomm is still better. But do you know who wins from all of this? Yes, that's right, us, the consumer, because we get better products with better prices. There are other companies that have tried making things on their own, things that took many years to develop and failed. There are many cases of that. You even have Huawei that is trying to do everything on its own. To their credit, it is holding its own, because if Huawei can't find a way to make this successful, then who can? Let's hope even they start to sell their chips, because the more competition, the better. Huawei might be like the AMD GPU making process. We all know when AMD started making GPUs, it's not like they didn't have loyal fans, and they had the money to invest, but since they weren't involved in the GPU making industry before, their software left a lot to be desired. Their GPUs had a better price for the performance, especially if you bought them used, because their prices dropped faster. They usually had more VRAM for the same price, and people needed more VRAM to run their games. But like I said, they still weren't good enough. People bought them and people weren't happy about that because of the many problems those GPUs had software wise. And fast forward to now, they fixed almost all of those issues, but now they don't have any brand loyalty. What does that mean? Well, it is simple. People trusted them and they weren't satisfied. To AMD's credit, they kept on going with the software updates and even launching new products. But if you have a consumer who trusts you, buys from you, and they are not satisfied with their purchases, chances that that consumer is coming back to you are low. Just so you know, I like AMD and I like that they are trying and innovating, and they are getting better and better, and people are trusting them more and more. But they had these issues in the past, and I just wanted to mention that because I think that is one of the things that is holding AMD back. And I also think that's what happened here, because now if you actually buy buy a GPU from AMD, chances are that software-wise it's not going to give you any kind of trouble, because now it is more mature. And Huawei might be the same. Right now it has some issues, but you never know. In the future it might get better. I just hope people don't lose their trust in Huawei. And let's not forget about Intel, who just recently started making GPUs. Not recently, they are actually going to launch the second model of their own GPUs, but it is the more recent GPU maker. And I am happy for that, because companies usually start off strong, but when they see that it is a lot harder to get into the game, they just leave the game altogether. They don't even make it to the second model. And with Intel GPUs, they have loyal fans who trust them and bought from them, even knowing that their GPUs are not the best. And Intel has a lot of money, that's why they are still holding on, but they didn't make GPUs previously. I mean, they make some really good integrated graphics, but that's as far as they went with that previously. And now they entered the ring with AMD and Nvidia, so of course things didn't go as planned. In the beginning their GPUs weren't the best, as expected. The performance wasn't there, some games weren't running properly and some games weren't running at all. But unlike any other company, Intel just kept on making those GPUs better and better and better, to the point where Intel GPUs now are, dare I say, good. And they didn't do that with the second generation or the third. They kept on working with the GPUs they already had shipped, and you gotta love when something you buy just keeps on getting better and better and better. It is not perfect by any stretch of the word, but it exceeded everyone's expectations, and that is rare and good. It's been a while since we have been excited for something. We know that companies that are introducing themselves right now are not going to compete in the high-end level, but if they make mid-range tech better and cheaper, then that's a big win, considering that most people are going to buy mid-range computers anyway. Honestly, we know that nothing is going to beat the RTX 5090 when it comes out, nor is anyone going to beat Apple M series chips when it comes to battery life. And talking about laptop chips and the M series chips, there have been some interesting things going on as well there, because now we are closer than ever to having that Apple-like performance and that Apple-like battery life on Windows laptops as well, because we have Qualcomm joining the ring. And unlike other companies, Qualcomm has made some chipsets for phones, so when it comes to well-optimized chips that are efficient, let's say that it has experience on that. And according to the things that we have heard, they are going to be incredible, and they will probably be cheaper than the Apple alternative. I can't wait to see what's going to happen there. It is really exciting, and it's not just Qualcomm. Intel is trying out some new designs, and by the looks of it, Intel is about to do some incredible things as well. Only time will tell though, so let's just keep on hoping. And of course, I don't think they will come close to anything with the performance of a laptop with a dedicated GPU, but you love seeing these things when they happen, and the laptop with the dedicated GPU is not going to be power friendly. Plus lately we have seen that people don't want, or better said, don't need all of that performance. They just need something more efficient, something lighter, something that is easier to use, and something that doesn't heat up when they are on the go. So I think the future is changing. Scratch that, I don't think, I know the future is changing. We have all of these people playing on handheld devices, and those devices could benefit a lot from being more efficient. They need more performance because they are running games, and games are power hungry. So I think it will take longer for those devices to have a better battery life, but you never know. Qualcomm might start making things for handhelds as well. The only thing I can say is that the future is looking interesting. It will probably take a couple more years for the new companies to be as good and compete in the high-end department, but this is a start, and for the first time in a long time, it seems like these companies are here to stay. By the way, what do you think about this topic? I would love to hear about that in the comments down below. Don't forget to give this video a like, and see you next time.